Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! It's finally here! Ladies, gentlemen, etc., I present to you the Kanohi Rao, the Great Mask of Translation. Wearing this mask allows one to understand other languages, including the thoughts and vocalizations of animals. In the hands of a zoologist like me, the potential of this mask for scientific research is nigh limitless. Let's give it a whirl. Welcome to another entry from the Omni-Bestiary. Now gather around all, for today's episode takes us to a universe watched over by the great spirit, Mata-Nui. This world is inhabited by the Rahi, biomechanical animals created by beings known as the Brotherhood of Makuta, to assist the Matoran villagers who resided there, and also oppress them when they decided they should overthrow Mata-Nui. The Makuta's work produced a vast ecosystem of beasts, ranging from teeny tiny bugs, to flocks of birds, to a titanic kaiju lizard. But today, we shall be discussing one of the more simpler creatures from this world, whose presence has been invaluable to the livelihoods of the Matoran, the Ussal Crab. The Ussal is a large crustacean with 6 legs, more formally known as pteropods, that allows it to climb vertical faces, as well as a pair of claws? They also have a durable shell, made from a material known to be hard enough to deflect rudimentary mining equipment, which works as a useful shield to fold its exposed limbs under. The Ussal can view its surroundings with what are presumably a pair of stalked compound eyes. Many crustaceans of your world possess compound eyes, which consist of a multitude of photoreceptor units called ommatidia, which each send signals to create an image of the creature's environment. These crustaceans also have eye stalks that increase their field of vision, though those of Ussal are significantly longer than those of Earth species. It could be theorized that they are like this so that the Ussal could better identify the many predators it will be at risk of encountering. Although its length also bears a resemblance to the antennae of terrestrial crabs, which are able to pick up scents so they can find food. It might be possible that these olfactory and ocular structures are actually fused together on the Ussal. But this other hypothesis of mine should probably be considered with a degree of skepticism, since having multiple sensory receptors on the same structure might cause some perception issues. The Ussal is a popular companion for the Matoran for their friendly and docile nature, and thus commonly use them to help with menial tasks, such as transportation and the handling of heavy loads. They can also be outfitted with tools to aid in jobs like mining. Once their work is finished, Matoran like to ride them in recreational races, or in a modified version of the sport of Koli. However, the Ussal is most commonly associated with the military of the Onokoro village of Mata-Nui, the island of the same name, not the Great Spirit. The Onokoro military, the Ussalry, has been a vital ally to a band of heroes known as the Toa, in their quest to revive Mata-Nui, the Great Spirit, not the island. As their name implies, the Ussalry arms the crabs to defend their village from threats, which almost entirely consists of the Makuta's forces' many attempts to take over Mata-Nui, the island, and also the Great Spirit too, I suppose. The Ussalry regiments are not the only crabs that have aided the Toa. One Ussal in particular, by the name of Puku, has played a major role alongside her handler, Takua the Chronicler, in supporting the Toa on their adventures. Puku is also noteworthy for being one of 2 Ussals that have been known to molt into larger forms, the other being a colossal mutant in the city of Metro Nui. The chitinous exoskeletons of crabs are incapable of growing with the rest of their body, so they have to continuously molt by prying themselves out of their old shell, then wait for a new one to harden up. It's plausible that Puku and the other Ussal crabs are able to molt through a similar process. It also implies that the entire Ono core military is structured around immature crabs.
The Rakshi are coming! The Rakshi are coming! Quickly! Arm the crabs!
It's too big! It doesn't fit!
Oh, shit!
Here's something that you might not know about crabs. They actually have tails. Yes, you see, at birth, their larval forms possess a clearly defined abdomen, but as they grow and molt, their tail gradually tucks under their body. It is believed that they evolved this way because such an anatomy would give predators one less appendage to grab onto. This is especially important because the abdomen contains structures like pleopods, which are needed to perform sexual reproduction and to carry their eggs. Such a form is also thought to increase mobility. This, among other reasons, is why the morphology of the crab has proven itself to be so effective in nature that has emerged multiple times in the evolutionary history of several different decapod crustaceans, in a process called Convergent Evolution. Convergent Evolution describes how different species end up developing similar structures. A simple example of this comes from comparing birds and bats. Both creatures develop wings on their upper limbs because conditions in their environment facilitate a need to fly, even though their skeletal structures and mechanism for locomotion differed. The specific form of convergent evolution, where crustaceans gravitate toward turning into a crab-like form, is known as carcinization. As for how any of this relates to the Ussal, well, it doesn't really. I just thought this would be an appropriate time to talk about this. Though it does beg the question of why the Ussal's stubby little tail is exposed. One last topic I wish to discuss today is the Ussal's respiratory system. And yes, just so I make clear, I am still fully aware that the specimen is not completely organic in nature. But considering the fact that other life forms in this universe need to use diving equipment or special masks when submerged underwater, I am certain that this creature must, at the very least, have a respiratory system analogous to those of Earth species. Anyway, you likely already know that many crabs tend to spend their time underwater. In order to properly breathe in this environment, crabs possess gills, which take in oxygen from water that passes over them and transfers it to their blood, which will deliver it to the rest of their body. These crabs can also take in oxygen from air when out of water, as long as they can keep their gills sufficiently moisturized. The Ussal could use a similar system, as they're commonly seen around the beaches of Ga-Koro or the subterranean pools of Ono-Koro, a habitat that is known to sustain crabs. But the problem with that idea is that the Ussals are known to venture far away from suitable sources of water. Heck, Puku has been perfectly comfortable hanging around the molten rivers of Ta-Koro. So we have to assume that the respiratory structures of the Ussals are more developed for a terrestrial environment than your typical crab. Fortunately, as mentioned previously, there do exist several species of earth crustaceans that have adapted to live on land. One of these creatures, the coconut crab, the largest living terrestrial arthropod in the world, has developed an additional structure called the branchiostegal lung, an organ that's more suited than the gills for the extraction of oxygen from air. This allows them to spend almost all of their entire adult life on land. In fact, these crabs could put themselves at risk of drowning if they spend too much time in the water. That being said, the lung still needs to be kept moist for it to work. So, while having this lung could have explained how the Ussal does so well on land, there is still absolutely, positively no way Puku could retain the moisture to breathe with the structure while standing by a stream of red-hot lava. As such, the Ussal needs to have a completely internalized respiratory system in order to survive these conditions. along with, of course, some additional heat-resistant parts, so that Puku here doesn't flat out melt. And with that, today's entry comes to a close. Thank you once again for joining me. If you wish to stay up to date with the release of future entries, feel free to subscribe and follow me on social media. I once again remind you that I'm planning a fun treat once I hit 50 subscribers, so I hope that incentivizes you. But for now, if you could excuse me, I have some supper that I need to attend to. Oh, sick! It tastes like plastic!